Mr. Speaker, by now, honorable members and the public will be aware of the decision by the European Council of Finance Ministers, or ECOFIN, to add Bermuda to the list of non-cooperative tax jurisdictions. Mr. Speaker, let me say from the outset that this is a setback for Bermuda, and it is for this reason that I, as the Premier and leader of this government, precede my colleague, the Honorable Minister in Finance, in making this statement to this honorable House and the public. Honorable members will know that for almost 2 years, the government and a host of technical officers have been devoted to addressing external threats to our jurisdictional operations in the area of financial services. During my tenure as Minister of Finance, and since then, we've been forced to sacrifice many domestic priorities to meet the requirements of, first, an assessment by the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, and most recently, the EU's requirements on economic substance. Mr. Speaker, honorable members will recall that the legislature has been tasked with considering and passing almost 50 pieces of legislation or other statutory instruments in support of both of these efforts. This has taxed the operations of several ministries and departments within government and has incurred numerous late nights and long weekends of detailed drafting and policy review. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, at the end of this process, on economic substance, a minor technical omissions in our regulations, essentially what appeared as a duplication in almost identical language in our drafts, was unintentionally omitted. Once the omission was discovered, it was immediately addressed. Despite the good faith shown over the last year and our immediate action, the reinsertion of the omitted line appears to not have been good enough for the European Union. Mr. Speaker, there is no value in recriminations or attempt to cast blame. Section 57(2) of our Constitution states the following, and I quote, "The Cabinet shall be collectively responsible to the legislature for any advice given to the Governor by or under the general authority of the Cabinet, and for all things done by or under the authority of any minister in the execution of his office." End quote. Mr. Speaker, this issue is one for which we must take responsibility, and as the leader of this government, in the legislature to whom the government I lead is collectively responsible, I have no difficulty in saying the buck stops at my desk. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda's inclusion on the EU's list of non-cooperative tax jurisdictions is only temporary. I wish to make clear that as of today, the 13th of March, and in fact, Mr. Speaker, even when this recommendation was made to ministers on the 6th of March, Bermuda was compliant then and remains so now. This is a technical issue which has already been remedied. Mr. Speaker, I would invite honorable members of the public to take note that in just 8 weeks or thereabouts, Bermuda will have the opportunity to be removed from the list, and I have every expectation that this will be done as our existing laws meet the standard required by the European Union. This is a view shared by Her Majesty's Treasury in London, who have also expressed to the Commission and publicly that they too expect Bermuda to be removed from this list based on our clear compliance with the required standard. Mr. Speaker, this will be a short but challenging period for Bermuda, but I am confident that the bedrock of our decades-old reputation for sound regulation and conducting first-rate business here will survive this latest threat. When this honorable House became aware of the recent report of the Foreign Affairs Committee and the recommendations regarding Bermuda, there was significant force in the unanimity of our political approach to that threat. Mr. Speaker, this is another one of those moments. We cannot let our partisan interests yield to any attempt to divide us as a jurisdiction. This is a together moment, and I look forward to the support of members opposite as we engage with the EU and continue to press Bermuda's case for demonstrated compliance. Mr. Speaker, let me close by saying this is clearly not where we want to be. It is not where we intended to be, and we are determined to secure our removal from the list of non-cooperative tax jurisdictions. Bermuda remains a jurisdiction of choice, of the best of businesses to operate, and this government will do all that is required to preserve that position. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.